All right, Matt, so tell us what you've got here. What have we got under this cloth?
What we have here is the body of Jesus Christ. It's in a sculpture that I made. And it's wrapped in a replica of the Shroud of Turin that I also had made. And so obviously there's no image on this particular replica, but I wanted to create one myself, made out of linen, made out of as close as we can get to what we think would be the linen would have looked like 2,000 years ago. And in my presentations, I like to show people how he was wrapped, and the fact that he was wrapped in the linen cloth along with a strip of the cloth, which we alluded to earlier, which was taken off the shroud and then later, after the resurrection, sewed back on. But this is the body of Jesus Christ, and we're about to, Guy, why don't you help us at the bottom?
All right, well, let me take this piece off that was folded over his feet. And then this is the reveal. So let me go ahead in front of you there. All right, so tell us about how you came up with all of this.
Well, this is very important. We would never have been able to create a sculpture of Jesus Christ without the Shroud of Turin. And that's because we used the VP8 image, which came out of an analog computer. So an image of the Shroud was fed into the computer, and what came out, amazingly, was a 3D image of Jesus Christ. And so my sculptors were able to take that image and create the sculpture, because without an image, it just couldn't have been done. So for people who are Shroudies, who believe that the shroud is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, this is exactly what he looked like. And it's just amazing. It's an apologetic for the Shroud of Turin that we were actually even able to create a sculpture of Jesus through an image that came off the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and so many of the pieces that are on here are exactly found in the shroud. So let's go through a couple of them. Let's start maybe down at the feet. Mm-hmm. So what are these two marks right here?
Well, these were the nails, and actually the nails that went in his feet were different nails than went in the wrists, but those are nail holes, and of course they're on the front and the back, and
so they go right through his foot.
They do.
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah, I can't imagine the pain he was in.
It's the whole sculpture is kind of it's just kind of breathtaking in terms of the level of torture that he went through.
That man can inflict on man. It is amazing.
It is. It's people are blown away by it. Yeah. When they see it.
Yeah. Now you've got a couple of other marks on here. Tell us what these are.
This is where his skin was ripped off by a Roman flagrum, which is a whip with nails on the end. And you can see here that that's exactly what happened. That the skin was just basically ripped off of it. Obviously here you can see another corroboration of the Gospels where he was nailed through the hands, but actually through the wrists. They wouldn't have, his hands would not have been able to support his weight, but through the wrists, it could and did. And that's exactly what the shroud shows.
And it's interesting too, because that would be something that most likely a forger would not have known. A 13th or 14th century forger would not have known that if you put a nail through the hand, that it would never be able to hold the weight. It had to actually go through the wrist where it could actually hold the weight of a 170, 180 pound man.
I think a lot of people that are for whatever reason skeptics of the shroud really haven't given that a lot of thought.
Yeah,
they haven't drilled down that far. One of the most famous, even maybe more famous than the hands and feet, is the wound in the chest.
Yeah.
And that people always, for whatever reason, remember that the Roman soldier stabbed him in the chest.
And so that's right here.
And then the blood came spurting out. They wanted to make sure he was dead. And that's exactly, they got him through the heart right there.
Yep.
And it's also, of course, very famous because his disciple Thomas wanted to stick his finger in there.
Yeah.
And he did.
What's also fascinating is it is believed that he was he had to walk down Via Doloroso from the Antonine fortress where he was originally sentenced to death, and they tied the patibulum, the crossbeam, on his arms, and it was most likely tied. It was tied across his back, and with that, that's probably what caused these wounds here, is because if he fell, he didn't have his hands to protect him, and so he fell right on his knees
And tore his knees.
and you can see those, and you're corroborating kind of. It's not certain that it's not written that he fell on his knees, but it's certain that he fell 3 times in the Gospels as he was coming down Via Doloroso, and then this is one reason why those wounds are probably there, because he had to. There was no other place for him to. break his fall.
Some people call the Shroud of Turin the first gospel, and I think that it's a very good way to describe the Shroud, but without the corroboration between the first gospel and the others, of course, which were 4 biographies of him, written by his disciples, it wouldn't mean as much. But there's a ton of corroboration between the written books and the linen.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we've spent most of our time on the body. Let's go up to the head. Tell us what is going on here.
Well, there's not as much going on as there could have been, because the reality is that when we created the sculpture, we cleaned up his face. And I tell you, I didn't want to leave the people that see the sculpture with what really happened to him, and because he had a broken nose and he had a face that was very much swollen. And so what we did was we created the face of what he looked like if you had seen him and passed him on the street. And this is, if you believe that the Shroud is authentic, this is exactly what Jesus looked like in real life. The facial image that's on the Shroud is much worse. Of course, there's nothing wrong. This is a beautiful image here, but the reality is that the facial image on the Shroud was of a man beaten to death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he was beaten, and there's on the Shroud, you'll see that one of the cheeks here is swollen, and that shows up pretty plainly right on the Shroud. The other one, like you said, is that the nose is broken, and the nose may have been broken from the beating, probably. But what's also interesting is that there was dust found on the tip of the nose, as well as on the knees, and certainly on the feet as he was walking down Via Doloroso. And that's because he most likely fell on his knees, and then he also probably fell on his nose, because he had nothing to protect him when he fell.
I just couldn't leave people with the image that was.
It's pretty ugly. I think you're right. I think
he was such an amazingly handsome man, and I wanted to show people what he really looked like, and this is it.